Welcome back. The House's Future of Defense Task Force calls for a whole-of-government approach to national security. To address the increasing competition from China, the Navy League suggests turning to a century-old law that keeps ships built, owned, and crewed in the United States. Jon Kaskin is National Vice President of Legislative Affairs at the Navy League. John, welcome. Thanks for coming on the program. We've talked about the Jones Act before, you and I, on this program. What is the context, though, of the Jones Act's contribution to what this task force is getting at about a whole-of-government approach to national security?
The Jones Act, as a reminder, is a cabotage law that requires cargo moving between two U.S. points to be on U.S.-built, U.S.-crewed, U.S.-owned, U.S.-flagged vessels. And it's been around in some form since the inception of the nation in order to ensure that we have a secure shipping and shipbuilding industry capable of supporting our economic and national security needs. The concern we have today is that China, as aggressive as they have been in other countries, that if we open up the Jones Act, would unfairly enter the domestic shipping trades and potentially cause us a difficulty in our economic and national security arenas. I can go into more detail if you wish.
One of the issues that you and your colleagues at the Navy League are writing about is something that we see all across the national security landscape, John, and that is that we're up against China and Russia, particularly China, that is willing to subsidize its own industries, and that makes this kind of apples-to-apples comparison not possible. You put it this way: state-supported shipbuilding by China and the other top shipbuilding nations make cost comparisons to the U.S. shipbuilding industry incongruous at best. Is that basically the essence of what you're getting at here?
Yes, Francis. I mean, the shipbuilding industry in China, as well as the shipping industry, are state-owned enterprises. And there's no transparency on what are the level of subsidies that are provided either through financing or directly or indirectly. And therefore, for shipbuilding, for example, they basically have driven almost all of their competitors out of the market. Right now, China, Korea, and Japan make up 90% of the shipbuilding industry, and China is trying to put those two countries out of business as well. They've already put pretty much us out of business, although China wasn't really the cause. But Europe is right now concerned about their cruise shipping business because the Chinese have gotten into that. So if they decide that they want to target an industrial area for their national security purposes, they will go after it. And they will see benefit of weakening our ability to support our economy by penetrating it with their shipping. And if we decide that to implement policies that they don't like, they can cause economic blackmail like they have done in the Far East when countries don't do what they would like to do. And of course, they could even sabotage if they were running up ships in the Great Lakes or on the riverways in case things became more and more hot and hostile.
Is there some legislative remedy or some other remedy that's necessary, or is just continued compliance with the Jones Act sufficient?
Maintaining the Jones Act is a start. I mean, our shipping and shipbuilding industry is much smaller than it has ever been. We had 20 shipyards after the end of the Cold War that were capable of building large ocean-going ships. We have 8 today, and only 4 of those are building commercial ships. The other are dedicated solely to Navy construction. With respect to the ships in the U.S. Merchant Marine, we're about a quarter of where we were at the end of the Cold War. And so we need to figure out ways to maintain what we have, and there are various options that we have been proposing in our maritime policy on how to do that.
What makes the most sense in your view to get the number back to where it needs to be?
Well, of course, cargo is king here, and the only way you attract cargo is to get the price of your shipping down or to provide legislation like the Jones Act, which mandates certain cargoes to be on ship no matter what it costs. And right now we're 50 ships short of even operating the reserve fleets for a proactive wartime operation. So we have to figure out how to fill at least that 50, and much of the 50 should be filled with tankers, because as we were looking at Chinese scenario, particularly a CSBA study, and Transcom is looking at it today, we are dozens and dozens of tankers short to support a wartime operation in the Pacific. In previous post-Cold War situations, we were able to charter tankers off the market. We don't believe that'll be the case today. So there's a proposed tanker security program that the House has passed that would start with an initial 10 tankers. Congressman Garamendi and Senator Wicker have proposed an energized shipbuilding, American Shipbuilding Act that would have a percentage of our export oil, crude oil, and LNG on U.S. flag and some U.S. built ships that would provide work for shipyards. And the Navy had proposed ways of developing dual-use ships that would be commercially owned, privately owned vessels that would operate along I-595, carrying trailers, 53-foot boxes, just like they are carried between Washington and Alaska today. And those ships could be diverted to wartime operation, as well as a inexpensive way of recapitalizing the Ready Reserve Force instead of building new ships and laying them up. So those are various options that are out there to expand the fleet. But for shipbuilding, we really need a national shipbuilding strategy to maintain at least the 4 yards that are building commercial ships now, that ensure that there's a steady workload of government construction, whether it's Navy, Coast Guard, or NOAA, as well as the Jones Act ships that need to be built, because that's a variable number. We only have less than 100 ships, and they last around 30 years. That gives you 3 ships a year to build on a steady average, and they're not steady. So how do you maintain 4 shipyards with that type of workload? You've got to have a mix, and we need those shipyards to be able to ensure we have the technology and the industrial base to be able to support our wartime operations and battle damage repair and so on.
Jon Kaskin, thanks very much for joining me. It's great to have you back.
You're very welcome, Francis. Thank you again.